Blender Python tutorial. It's part 2 of my series where I try to explain you how you can make your life easier in Blender. If you have tedious jobs and you know a little bit of Python, you can do example given such an animation here. So I don't want to waste your time, let's get right started. So I'm gonna start here with a brand new file. And here we are, here we have our first cube and we keep this default cube but we delete the lamp. Okay, we start with the default cube and we just press Shift D to double the cube, and then we press Y to move it on the Y axis, and we press 3 and we turn. And now we press nothing else but just Shift R to repeat this action. So we press this a few times and you see now we have already something here. What we want to do now, we select the first guy here and we go to the physics tab and we add a widget body and we give him a mass of 0.2. And what we now want, we want that all objects here get a widget body. No, that's not the Python task, because all of you know you can copy these to the widget body options by just selecting all these objects here and select the last, the one with the widget body. Then you can go to Object, Widget Body, Copy from Active, and what you expect, yes, they all fall down, so they all have a widget body here. What we want now, we want to connect these widget bodies here with a widget body constraint. So this and this should be connected. So we just select both of them and then we go to Object, Widget Body, and it's called Connect. What Blender did now for us is, first, it did create an empty between the two locations of these two objects. Second, it gave this empty a widget body constraint, as you can see here, but it is fixed. We don't want a fixed one here, we want a generic spring, and we want this spring to have an angular and a linear force. So we give this here a force of 5,000. We do this for all these guys here, and we give here also damping 5,000. And after we did this, we would have, if we want to do this for the whole snake, because I want to make a snake of cubes as you saw in the beginning animation, we have to repeat this process for all these cubes, which is kind of tedious. Because, of course, you can copy this, Shift D, Y, and then eyeball this in the middle, but you have still here to change this to cube 2 and this to cube 1, and then repeat this for all these cubes. And then you get something like, yes, what I also want to do is I want this to be animated. And then I show you a small trick which is very nice. This is here the auto key. If you check this and if you then press the spacebar to start the animation and press G to move, you can move it, and Blender saves the movement as keyframes, as you can see here. And if you now play it, you have an animation. And you already see we have a little snake here, but of course we want the whole snake. So what we do now is first delete this empty here, and then we want to automate this creating of the empty and giving this a constraint by scripting. So let's get right started. We go to scripting. The first thing I want to do is, like I did in the last video, we make our life easier by just moving these objects here with M to a new collection, which we call widget bodies. So first we know these are the rigid body, which is good, which is a bit tidy. It's always good to have. And the second thing is we can easily now access these objects one by one with a loop over the collection. And you already know this, so we say import BPY, this is the Blender library, so we can use Blender commands and access Blender. Second, we want to use a loop like last time. For E is our index, so we can access other elements as well. And then our object, and we loop via our enumerate, and you know what the enumerate command is from the first part. I don't have to tell you this, so we enumerate by BPY data collection, and we access our collection by our name, and this is rigid bodies, yes. And then we say all objects, and that's already it. And now we make a small test. We print I object and we let it run and just check whether this works fine. Yes, shit can happen, so we just save this. We call this tutorial Python part 2, save, and we start Blender again. And we load the program again, we run again, and we go to terminal, and it says 0 and then all our cubes, 14, yes. So it works. Next step we want to do is we want to create an empty. How can we create an empty? Well, you just can, of course, do as I showed you. If you go here to empty plain axis, and he now shows you the command here in the info console. But there is a better way. You can just say BPY data objects new, and then you give a name to it. So we call this constraint, and then you say none, and this will assign our variable empty this new empty object. Yeah, if I now hit 1, I see nothing. Why don't I see nothing? Well, because we are in the wrong view. This is just the scene, the view layer we are seeing here. If you go to Blender file and then you go to objects, you will see there are a lot of constraints we created, and that's because the constraint is not connected to our view layer scene. That's why we don't see it here. It is there somewhere, but not in our scene, in our view layer. So we have to connect this to our view layer. We need BPY data scene. Oh no, not data, I'm sorry. BPY context scene collection objects link empty. So with this command we add this really to our view layer. So let's check that out. We run it, and you see here are our constraints. Works. I delete this for now because I want to change them also a bit, so I'm gonna delete them right now. So what we want now is we want to make a constraint out of these empty, and BPY ops rigid body constraint add. Now we have to give it a type, and the type we want to have is generic string. So let's check this out. If we start this, we have a Python error, as you can see here down here, and the error says context missing for active object. So why does this work? If it says context missing for active object, this error appears if the object you are working with, because it's ops, which is operations, we need, or operators, I'm not sure. But this needs an active object. So an active object means a selected object. So how do we select an object in Blender? We can say empty, select, set, and true. And because we are good citizens, afterwards we don't select it anymore, so we don't change the behavior for the next one. So we do set false. And now 1. And you see now context missing active object. Just selecting is not enough. We must set the active object in the view layer. Set the object active. We need this command here, bpy context view layer objects active equals to empty. So we say this empty is now our active object. So let's check this out. We delete again our constraints here and we say run. And as you can see, we have here a constraint. And we don't see it because it's at 0, 0, 0. Here it is, you see. So this works, the creation, and now we check whether it has a constraint. So we press here the button and we check it here, and yes, it has a generic string. That's great. What we want to do now is we want to set the location of the constraint between these two objects. So we delete the constraints again and we are gonna set a location. This is pretty easy and pretty straightforward. This is just empty dot location equals, and then you can give a fixed value here if you want to. You see now it's up here, but of course it's not just one, there are a lot of, because I just ran it. But we have to calculate these two, so we need here previous object equals to bpy all object 0. So this is our first object. And after our loop we say previous object equals to object. And what we do now, we ask whether we are at this position here and not on the first one, because we just want one empty between, so we have to skip the first one. So if I bigger 0, we do this, and now we have to do the indentation. Indentation is very important in Blender Python and in Python, so you have to always here have the right number of spaces so that it works. So after an if statement or a for loop, basically if there a colon, then you have to indent it. So this for loop, and it's pretty good because you see it, because everything below is in the for loop and everything below is in the if loop. If it would be here, it wouldn't be, this command wouldn't be in the if loop, it would just be in the for loop. And if it would be here, it would be outside the for loop. So indentation is very, very important in Python. So what we want to do now, we want to calculate the location. And the location, it's pretty easy to calculate. Let's take these two for example. We just have to calculate the difference between these two, and then we have a vector which points in the right direction, and then we have to, of course, add divide this by 2, so it's half width, and then we add the location of the first cube here, and then we have exactly the point in the middle. I hope this was clear, and I hope it was not understandable. So what we need, we calculate now the location by object location and we subtract our previous object location, and then, as I told you, we need just the half of it. So we make here this bracket divided by 2, and then we add again the previous object location. Now let's run this and watch this. We have there empties between all cubes, which is exactly what we wanted. So I delete my constraints again, of course, because this is not all. We also want to set the right objects. How do we do this? Well, very easy. We add an empty, we go to rigid body constraint, and we just fill here in the first, we fill in here the second, and we just copy the commands here. So what we do is we copy, and we have BP by context object. We delete this because this is the active object, but we want the object from the loop. That was the mistake I made in the first video, as you remember. So, and the object we want to assign here, you see, is the previous object. This is our first object. And the second object, now we can just copy this line here, so, and then say object 2 is object. What we want to do also is we want to give it some values, and we want to check here x and here x. So let's copy these two commands. This is number 1 and this is number 2. This is just for x. Of course we want this for y and z as well. So we make here y and that, and then we copy this command here and chugga chugga, and now I messed up my indentation, y and that. What we else want to do, we want to give values here, let's say 5,000 and 5,000, and because we are clever, we save this in a variable, so 5,000, so we can change it later on easily. And then we again just copy our commands here and indent it in the right way, and we copy it 3 times. So Control C, Control V, oops, Control V, and the same with the other one. And then we just have to change y and that, and y and that. Here we are, here we go. Let's, do we have constraint? No. Let's run this. None type object has no attribute object 1 in line 24. Of course, because our rigid body constraint is not on object, but on our empty. But you didn't say anything. How should I know? You could have given me a hint. Oh no, I'm alone. Ah yes, that's a problem. Okay, let's do it again. We have here now one constraint until the hour occurred. So x delete and 1. And you see, now here are constraints. And let's try this. We move it. Wow, have you seen this? Our snake is working. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show you. That's how you use rigid body constraints. You can animate them, and now you can even make your life much easier with Python. I hope you learned something. Have fun. Bye.